Spawning in the top left position, we've got the blue Zerg player from Raw Gaming. It is AndyPandy. And down in the bottom right, the red Terran player, it's Moomin.
Yep, so a Terran versus Zerg starting out on that map that we talked about, and of course Star Station. That is forced cross spawn positions. We just mentioned that 10 times already, but it is going to have a big impact on the game. I mean, usually you're going to see this Overlord that is now flying in cross positions. You're going to see it go down the bottom or go down to the side and see where is my opponent spawning, what is happening. But not in this game. As you saw, as soon as we loaded into the game, it had that nice message, cross spawns only, which still is what I think one of the greatest features of all time.
It is. It's up there, sort of. I put it on level pegging with probably the Wheel and Fire in terms of how good of an implementation it's been. But as we can see, in terms of openings from these two, already Moomin doing something a little untoward, getting down the gas straight after the rack, so no super quick expansion. But then Reapers on this map are amazing. I really love them. There's a lot of cliff area you can use and get good scouting information, potentially do a little bit of damage, force some lings, lowering the drone count, and they all just set you up quite nicely going into the mid-game. And as we said, loading into the map, taking a third isn't the easiest thing, so you want to do a lot more on 1 and 2 bases.
Yeah, you're right. What I'm wondering is how many Reapers is Moomin gonna go for? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? 4 is really the maximum that I've ever seen. I mean, 4 Reapers kill drones really quickly. They deal with Zerglings perfectly as well, but when you go for 4 Reapers, that's 200 gas invested in Reapers, so your factory is gonna be very much delayed.
It will be delayed, and the only benefit you can get out of it is if you do some damage, and against certain races, such as Protoss, you can definitely do a bit more, because until a Stalker comes out, it's difficult to deal with. But against Zerg, they've got Queens. Queens are very effective due to their range at stopping Reapers and really zoning them out, so there's a very small window of opportunity you can try and exploit, and hopefully we'll see Moomin be able to do that.
Yeah. The drone is actually going to morph into an extractor as the Reaper pops out of the barracks that was, of course, constructed on the high ground. I think the extractor will be cancelled. I don't really think that's worth the investment, because Terran players rarely ever go for 2 gases anymore on 1 base. So that shouldn't... yeah, there it is. Cancel goes down, and the drone just going to be... oh, this is so old school, man. This is so old school.
Yeah, this is a really old, as you said, old-fashioned build, and the key benefit of this isn't so much the vision you get granted by the extractor or anything like that, but the big thing is that it allows you to limit your opponent's options. You know that they've only got 1 gas, and that just means that it can potentially delay tech. But as you quite rightly said, Lurlian, it's very unusual for Terran players to rush that second gas down, especially when they go for a gas-first opening.
Yeah, it's not a thing we very often see anymore, as the Reaper is trying to do some harassment at the natural expansion here of AndyPandy. AndyPandy, I think we talked about that at I-47 or maybe I-48, about how his name just rolls off the tongue so sweetly, like AndyPandy. I love the name.
It is a nice name. And of course, Raw Gaming have to be one of the coolest teams for coming to the grand finals wearing dinosaur onesies.
He's building that armory in vision of the extractor? Well, Moomin is not trying to hide his hand here at all. He's like, okay, well, I'm going for this strategy. Let's see if you can deal with that.
The only thing I'm thinking is that it's a bit of a mind game.
It has to be. I mean, he knows the extractor is there. He has to know that is in vision, of course. Even if you're doubting if that's going to be in vision there, you're going to put it all the way on the other side just to make sure that you cannot see it. So I'm sure there's something behind this.
There's definitely a plan. Well, we see the Marauder coming out, and so Helium Marauder is really strong. It can do a lot of damage, but you don't want to revealing the Marauder as well. This is really giving away everything that could be going on.
Yeah, and AndyPandy must be thinking something's up. This is not normal. He or she is trying to play mind games on me. Something else must be happening. It must be Thor's or something. I don't know. It can't be Hellbats. That would be too obvious. It can't be an Hellion Hellbat Marauder push. That's too obvious. Has to be something different. So he might be preparing in the wrong way. But on the other hand, if he just concludes the right thing, he's going to be so ready.
He will be really ready, and as we can see, already getting out some roaches, ready to deal with these Hellions. So the Hellions on their own not going to do much. The 2 Hellbats are just about to spawn. But with this Evolution Chamber wall off, which I really like, it's just not going to be able to do that much damage, to be honest. Even with the... well, there's only a single Marauder out. What are you actually going to achieve? The Tech Lab not doing anything else, as we can see. No upgrades getting research from that. And therefore, with Stim only just starting now, what benefit has there been from going for this really early factory and getting the Hellbats out really quickly?
Not an awful lot, that I can tell you right now. I think these Hellbats are just going to be used defensively, and of course, with that medevac drop that we can see heading out right now, the Hellions have tried harassing the expansion a little bit, but AndyPandy has a large amount of roaches, as in 11, which is not large by itself, but at this point in the game, 8 minutes, 11 roaches, that is a fair amount. That's a lot, actually.
Yeah, Moomin, the one thing that she really needs to do now is either macro up heavily behind this or try and do some damage. With the fact that the medevacs are coming out, that's just going to allow the option for potentially some drops coming in. We all know how effective Hellbat drops can be, and indeed there's 2 picked up straight away. But AndyPandy, he's got Zerglings patrolling right around the edge of his main. That's a really smart move in itself. And also, he's got the 1-1 upgrades coming down, so definitely going to be going Roach Hydra.
Let's see what these Hellbats can do in the mineral line. They're starting to throw some fire everywhere. The medevac, of course, healing away at these Hellbats. They have been able to kill a few workers, but are now focusing down a Queen. It's the most cost-efficient way of doing things. 4 workers have been killed. Not the best amount, but the Hellions are coming into the 3rd base again. They might be able to roast the Queen if AndyPandy's not careful.
Yeah, this Queen could very well go down. You don't want to lose Queens this early on. Meanwhile, we've got another... oh, good Lord, Roach is coming in. Will manage to get the Queen, though. Definitely worthwhile there. But there is a drop coming into the main base as well. But with Roaches preemptively there, not going to be able to achieve much. The Natural also getting dropped simultaneously. The Queens and Roaches focusing that down. So really not that much damage done. In total, 6 workers have been killed this game by Moomin.
Yeah, not really doing an awful lot there. Total of 7 after all harassment is done. After everything is said and done, 7 workers killed, and there's 1 Hellbat still left alive. So let's count Hellbats for a second. I think we've lost 3 Hellbats and 4 Hellions in exchange of a Queen and 7 drones. I don't think there's really a clear victor there. I think our Zerg player on 3 bases is going to be feeling quite good about his defense.
Should be. There really hasn't been that much lost in terms of the drone count. If we take a look, they are equal at the moment. So the one thing that AndyPandy would want is another big drone wave, but he's got 8 spilling out at the moment. Moomin, she's securing her 3rd though. So by getting that 3rd up, if able to be held, really gives a nice economical boost. There are going to be those 3 orbital commands pumping out mules, really putting her ahead in terms of the income. So that's the really important thing we note there. But AndyPandy has got 1-1 finished, is starting to produce some Hydras, and also getting Burrow Tech down.
Oh, that's cool. So Burrow's coming out, Roach Speed is coming out. So we're going to be going into Roach Hydra for the mid game here, which has, of course, become much more powerful with Heart of the Swarm, whereas in Wings of Liberty it wasn't that much of a used strategy at all. We see that 1 Hellbat that was left over after all the harassment is trying to contain the creep spread a little bit, because the creep spread is actually quite impressive. For 12 minutes into the game, it's already approaching the middle of the map, so if that gets kept up by AndyPandy, he's going to be approaching the 3rd base of Moomin within just a couple of minutes.
And when that 3rd base really starts getting creep near to it, then that's really where you get a bit anxious as a Terran player. You don't want to be moving out. Of course, creep not only gives Zerg units additional speed, but it gives vision, which personally I think is far more important in a lot of ways, because you know when that push is coming, you can produce the right units. As we can see, AndyPandy getting down his infestation pit, also groove spines. So as you quite rightly pointed out, we could be seeing some swarm hosts here. That's a possibility. Could also just be a quick tech up. And the medevac getting sniped off there by the Hydras was really nice.
Yeah, that is quite impressive, as we now see the big Terran ball slowly starting to move out. There's a lot of medevacs here, 7 medevacs to support this Marine Marauder Hellbat army. Of course, Stim has finished up. These Marines and Marauders have 1-1 upgrades. The Hellbats have no upgrades whatsoever. Drones are trying to get safe by morphing them into an extractor, but that's not really going to do enough against this big of an army. His scan goes down on the high ground. Looks like AndyPandy wasn't quite ready to defend against this push just yet. He's making 9 Hydras, but these Hellbats are going to make very short work of this army.
Yep, they are going to go just straight through, soaking up a lot of the damage. The Marauder's really helping against the Roaches as well, but as you can see, AndyPandy does have a nice attack arc with the Spines there, has been able to force Moomin back, and she's in full retreat for the time being, but forced to cancel on the 4th while securing her own one. That's very worthwhile.
Yeah, especially if that planetary fortress gets made into a planetary fortress, because that's going to really mean that there's no way that AndyPandy is going to be able to break that. I mean, he is on pure Roach Hydra, and he doesn't have any long-range units. He doesn't have Broodlords. He doesn't have any other kind of unit that he could throw at that planetary fortress to easily take it out. So that planetary fortress, really good decision to have that there. It's a bit of a forward base. It's in a risky position, but I love the position on that. AndyPandy is going to have a very tough time trying to break that down.
And if he can't break it down, then the problem comes down to the fact that Moomin is at 75 SCVs to just 70 drones. With 3 mules, that's a big economic lead. The only point really that she isn't far ahead is in terms of upgrades, which are equal, but, and this is a big but, AndyPandy is not yet researching 2-2, but Moomin has nearly completed the 2-2 upgrades. With the upgrade advantage, with an additional base, better workers, more supply, and a very strong army composition, AndyPandy could be in some real problems here.
He definitely could be. He's trying to do some harassment at the 3rd base of Moomin right now. It's 2 Roaches and 4 Hydras. A little, pretty dangerous attack party. A lot of worker killing potential, but it's not really working out. At the same time, Moomin is trying to push into AndyPandy's base at the 3rd. Not really that successful yet. I think there might be too many Marines and Marauders here and not enough Roach Hydra, and that is what AndyPandy thinks. He's trying to retreat. His Vipers, of course, utterly useless. They're not going to be used in this battle at all. He's trying to retreat them and maybe make another stand somewhere else.
Yeah, this is really nice. The 3rd base is almost certain to go down. However, we do have a little bit of aggression coming in by just a few Hydralists down to the 3rd base of Moomin, which is a little bit of a counter push, but I don't think it's going to be doing enough. Losing your 3rd is far more significant than losing a handful of SCVs, and AndyPandy is getting that push into the 3rd cleaned up now and forced back, and Moomin definitely a long way ahead in this game as it stands.
Yeah, we can see it reflected in the supplies. 50 supply, and the last units get taken out here. The Vipers get evaporated, and the last Roaches and the Hydras are kiting back, but that's not going to be able to do enough. The Queen pops out, dies pretty much instantly. The hatchery goes down. GGPW comes out of AndyPandy as